I have patients that are 25 and like never have sex. I have 80-year-olds that have the biggest sex drive. So it has nothing to do with age anyway. It's just about realizing sometimes you have a mismatch in desire. And are you the one always initiating? Are you the one that, does not initiate? And so you have to have those conversations with a partner, like, this is what I need. Like for you, maybe it's just once a week or once a month. I don't know. But if you don't have that, it starts breeding resentment. It starts breeding, sort of like anger, distance. And again, that just starts separating you from that intimacy.
Hello, darlings, and welcome to Not Over, Just Different. I'm Natalie Ledwell, and I'm here to share deeply insightful and vulnerable conversations with you from people who are willing to open up and share what their journey's been like so that you can learn and be inspired to take action in yours. It's never too late to begin again or to see a new perspective. No matter what your dreams or goals are, you'll find inspiration and community here. It's time to rediscover yourself, reignite your passions, and make the next 50 years even more full than the first. Are you craving more intimacy in your relationship? Are you feeling disconnected from your partner? Maybe even feeling a little lonely? Well, today I have urologist Diana Londoño, and we are going to be talking about how to create that intimacy and connection again through physical, mental, conversation, and spiritual ways so that you can have a loving and beautiful and passionate, fulfilling life. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast for this week. This week, I have urologist Diana Londoño with me. Hi, Diana. How are you?
Thank you, Natalie. Good morning. It's so lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to our conversation today because we're going to be talking about intimacy, and not just sexual intimacy, but intimacy on all levels when it comes to our relationships. I know that for a lot of women, we get to this, well, men and women, we get to this stage and maybe we've been married for a really long time or been in a long-term relationship. And sometimes things can get a little stale, there can be a little distance between us. I think sometimes that can be for a number of reasons, whether that's physically what our bodies are going through. And I know women, we all know we go through a lot of changes, but it'd be interesting to hear if men go through changes as well and how that kind of affects, the connection and intimacy we can have in a relationship, but how it's not just about the bedroom, how it's about so much more than that. So intimacy, when do you think that actually starts? When does that whole process, begin?
Yeah, I really think it starts outside of the bedroom, first of all. I feel there's so many people and even physicians that sort of say like, well, you need to schedule that time for sex. You need to make time for that because if you don't schedule it, it's not going to happen. You're not going to have that connection. But I think the physical act of having sex, it is a physical act. And yes, there's an exchange of energy, but it really starts outside. If you don't have outside the bedroom that connection where you're having a communication of an honest, authentic communication, if you don't have that place where you can feel vulnerable and really open your heart and really sort of be curious about what the other person is saying or not saying. And, we get triggered all the time, but instead of fighting that trigger, we can kind of pause and open our heart and get curious and like, well, why are you saying that? Or what does that mean to you? And really an invitation to open the lines of communication, of course, from the mind and from our voice, but from our heart. And then when that happens, then it's sort of going to be a next step that is going to be, not have to even be scheduled to then have that time in the bedroom or outside the bedroom to really have that connection, sexually with that intimacy. That is going to be a lot more fulfilling and really be a true union than just going through the exercise of the physical part of like having sex and orgasming, here we go, and like just roll over. So, we could all do that, and many of us will do that. But I think when you change that intimacy to start way outside and sort of consummate it like in that union, it really can be a really beautiful thing. So I think we have to sort of change how we look at sex and, when we do feel connected, how that is going to then translate into the bedroom.
So what are some of the challenges that you hear or that you see of women at this time of our life? Like, what are some of the common occurrences that come up for us that we struggle with?
There are so many. We can even start just physically, like you said, with the changes. And I see so many women as a urologist, going through perimenopause, going through menopause, and not really addressing those changes that are happening. Because, physically at our vulva level, when you go through menopause, there's no more estrogen. So the tissue is going to get dry and fragile and uncomfortable. So who's going to want to have sex when it hurts and it burns? So if we don't address that physically just to start with, then it's not going to be pleasurable. And there's nothing worse than somebody having sex with their partner just sort of for the duty of it and not taking care of themselves and their body and realizing they have pain and like that's not something they want to do. But if you're afraid and you don't have that connection to say to your partner, like, no, it's painful, I don't want to do this, then like this is the problem. It's so important as women to use our voice, not only in the bedroom, outside the bedroom, with our physicians, to take care of our needs and say, like, this is what I need, this is what I want. And that way, again, things can be pleasurable. And like we can kind of go this across the board of anything in life. But we need to use our voice, we need to take care of ourselves and not just think about sex of pleasing our partner and what do they need? And, oh, they have needs. Like, well, so do we. We have needs as well. Women are sexual beings. Women have needs, but you have to speak up and say, maybe physically, let's start that. I'm having some issues. 1, 2, there's also mismatch in desires. Whether you're perimenopause or not, or you're young, 20, 50, 80, I have patients that are 25 and like never have sex. I have 80-year-olds that have the biggest sex drive. So it has nothing to do with age anyway. It's just about realizing sometimes you have a mismatch in desire. And are you the one always initiating? Are you the one that, does not initiate? And so you have to have those conversations with a partner, like, this is what I need. Like for you, maybe it's just once a week or once a month. I don't know. But if you don't have that, it starts bringing resentment. It starts bringing, sort of like anger, distance. And again, that just starts separating you from that intimacy.
All right. So let's say that someone's listening and they go, look, I do need to open up a conversation. Things aren't working out for whatever reason. How do you approach that conversation if you've never had that before and you're in a long-term relationship?
Best place, to sort of plant a tree, was yesterday. So we really have to start it today. Things are uncomfortable for a reason because there's growth there. Without pain, there's no growth. And so, yes, you don't ever have to talk about it, but then you're going to have this relationship that's not going to be to a level that it can truly be. And so, yeah, you can stay silent and be like, well, I'm embarrassed, or like, oh, this is uncomfortable. Or you can just get that courage, really come from a place of love and self-love and say like, no, my needs are important. I'm not feeling fulfilled. I'm not feeling I'm having sex as frequently as I do, or I'm having pain, or I don't have the desire, whatever it is. You could be the one with too much desire or not enough. And so you need to just realize, okay, I need to take care of myself. Sexual health is health. It's not independent of emotional or physical or spiritual health. It is part of your health. So if that's not working, you're not addressing that, it's going to cause anxiety, depression. It's going to cause distancing. So it's really important. And again, we're sexual beings. There's nothing dirty about it. It's a beautiful thing, but we have to address our own needs and speak up.
Well, I know from personal experience, towards the end of my marriage, my husband and I, we'd stopped having sex. We became distant. Because when you stop having sex and you don't have that intimacy, then you don't have affection. And then when you don't have that, then you're sitting at the dinner table and you have nothing to say to each other. You're like, what are we doing here? This is crazy. So I think having the courage to sit in that conversation. And I think the other thing that's really important is to understand that whatever physical things that you are going through, even spiritually or mentally, you're not the only person that's going through it. It's a common thing for this time of our life. With menopause, our brains are completely rewiring. We are thinking different. We want different things. Now, that doesn't mean that, you need to seek another partner. But what it could mean is that, okay, well, now that things are changing, if you're saying that to your partner, like, I love you, we want to work this out. Because otherwise, if you don't say anything, it gets to a point where there's just so much distance that there's,
And that can happen in so many, like parts of her life, whether you've been married 20 years, 30 years, I've been married almost 20, but, even like women that have like small children, I have small children. And, that time of your life when you're taking care of small children and, as a woman maybe working, there's so many demands of your time and energy. And sometimes that spouse sort of gets sort of like the last end of it. And that is going to cause that distance. And then, yeah, you're not going to have sex. And, being a sexless marriage, it's a sort of warning sign that something's truly, not right. Because not spending that time, intimately, physically, emotionally with your partner, it really is like you need to step and think like, what is happening? What am I not putting my attention to? And that energy, because again, it's going to, yes, like you said, translate into sitting at the table. Like, okay, is this all there is to life? And then you're going to wonder that. And maybe you do live your life just going through the motions and just being roommates and, that friends. Or you can speak up and say, these are my needs. Can these be met? Or this is just a time that maybe we've grown apart. You can still love them, but you don't have to live with them and keep your whole life with them. But really say I maybe need something different. We are just maybe growing differently and that's okay. But, what do I want and what's important to me?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that changes men are going through, because I think if we, as women, we're going to sit in this conversation, we have to have some empathy for what men are also experiencing, because they're also going through changes as well, right?
Absolutely. I mean, just like women go through menopause and lose their estrogen, men as age also lose testosterone. And that's going to be a big driver of their libido and somewhat their erections, but really their libido, their desire. We also have to think about, as, men and women, all of them, but as men get older and maybe get unhealthier, then maybe their sleep patterns get disrupted or they have sleep apnea or other issues that could actually affect their testosterone. It's going to lower it if you're not sleeping well. And so that's going to affect your desire. Also, stressors, changes in life. So many men, depending where they are, maybe they're transitioned to retirement and they're also wondering what's my next step? Am I valuable? Do I have a purpose? And they start getting depressed. They start losing their desire. Plus problems with erections, also very common as you age. So they're going to have trouble with their erections. Maybe they're embarrassed to have these conversations with their partner. They truly even are embarrassed to speak about this with their physician. So imagine their partner and they feel this sort of weight on their shoulders of who am I if I don't have an erection? Am I valuable in this relationship? And, that brings a lot of shame and guilt, these conversations and these acknowledgement that maybe your body is changing. So again, men suffer just as much. Men have the shame of, who am I without this penis's erection? And so we absolutely have to have compassion for them. And we, again, have to have these conversations. And maybe they're not initiating because they've noticed their erection is not as strong and they don't want to disappoint the partner or they're embarrassed themselves. So again, that discussion, that compassion, that open communication is critical. If you do want to grow with your partner, if you want to age gracefully with your partner, if you want to continue this relationship and intimacy, again, it doesn't have to be in the bedroom only. It really starts outside. But if you do want to have that act of sex, that is wonderful. But there's many people too that also maybe not want to have, sex anymore, but they have a beautiful relationship and a beautiful intimacy and connection. So it could be with or without it, but you have to make that decision with your partner.
Yeah, I love that because, the other thing that I've been dealing with a lot because, with, the new app that we've come out with FeelWise, it's all about emotional acknowledgement, emotional regulation. And I've seen some awful statistics of, suicide rates, especially here in the US, that, men and boys are committing suicide at 5 times the rate of women and girls. And when I talk to men about this and I've been in these conversations, what often comes up is that they feel like they're not meant to have these emotions because, men are meant to be strong and they're meant to, have it all together and be the provider and the breadwinner and all these kind of things. So that's a lot of stress for them. When they do have these emotions, they feel like they can't share them with their partners because they feel like they're going to be judged, which is a big thing that comes up. So, when we talk about creating this beautiful intimacy with your partner, maybe start here, and how you go into it, the dance of a conversation like this is that you be vulnerable, they mirror back and they be a little bit vulnerable, but you create this space where you go, there is no judgment here. There's only love and we're only here to support each other. And then, you can create a very intimate conversation and connection just through a conversation when you can, but I think you have to model it first. I think you have to be vulnerable first. Don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I think a big part of intimacy is vulnerability. It's just being open and just realizing yes, I'm sort of laying my heart out here, my feelings. And I think that's very challenging because yes, as a society, loneliness is a pandemic. Many men feel lonely because of this exact reason, because they feel like they're not able to share. They have emotions that they are feeling this or that. And that brings a lot of loneliness, even if you're surrounded by people. And that is a pandemic on its own. And that has true effects of our physical well-being and longevity. When we are lonely, it has effects on our body. So I agree, it's not comfortable, and men have been socialized to be tough and not to show emotions. whether it's in the US or many cultures that have to be more stoic. But that does a huge disservice, because why are we seeing these huge rates of, again, suicide in men, depression? And so there has to be a reason. And it's this sort of stress that we carry, or they carry as men, not being able to express something that is a core of our human existence, which is feelings. Feelings are okay. Like, you don't have to judge them. You don't have to fix them. Should not depress them, suppress them. They are there to give color to our experience, in this world. And so look at it as a rainbow. There's so many flavors. You don't have to get up with one or just have one emotion and just always be happy. No, there's so much variety of emotions that we can experience. And that really makes, life rich.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you know that based on your unique gifts, abilities, and talents, you fall into one of 3 specific financial freedom personality types? Discovering which type you are can provide clarity on the best career paths for your fulfillment, happiness, and financial success. Go to mindmovies.com/career quiz to find out yours now.
All right, so let's talk physically. So let's say that we're in these conversations, but as a woman where sex isn't pleasurable, maybe it's painful, what are some of the things that we can physically do to be able to get our bodies back into a place where we want sex again?
Yeah, I think it's really crucial, to see a physician, because there are physical changes, especially as we age, but even when you're younger. Not only are the changes of the skin, of the vulva, of the vagina, dry, but even the muscles that hold up your bladder, your vagina, is called the pelvic floor muscles. And these are like a hammock of muscles. And they actually can get really tense and tight. And it's sort of like when we type a lot and then our shoulders are hurting and we sort of need a massage. The same thing will happen in the pelvic floor. And when they're so tight, imagine these are really tight, tense muscles, and then you're having a penis go in your vagina, which is already painful and tender. It's not going to be pleasurable. So it's not even about just being in the menopause age, but as a younger woman, with this stress that we all carry, it's going to go somewhere. So that can be painful. So when you get evaluated by a urologist or your gynecologist, an easy exam can tell you, okay, is it the muscles? Is it the tissue? What else could be happening that is causing pain and discomfort? And there are treatments, like for the changes in the vulva. Estrogen cream is safe. It is not absorbed. It does not cause cancer. It can be life-changing. And it can 100% prevent urinary tract infections, which can really kill you because you get septic. So that's super easy. Every woman should be on that, just like your face moisturizer. You really need that in your vulva. 2, physical therapy can be extremely helpful to relax those muscles, to strengthen and to stretch out those muscles that are really tight. And it can make a huge difference. But really also doing activities to lower your stress, levels. What are you doing for yourself to decompress? Are you walking? Are you in nature? Are you painting? Are you listening to music? Are you dancing? Like, what is it for you that could be, going to lower your stress levels? So that's really important. And even just getting into like warm baths with salt, literally salt or lavender, it's going to help pull out that stress energy. And you could also do that in the beach if you're close to a beach. The salt water is doing the same effect, pulling that energy, that stress energy. And that's why people feel much better when they go to the beach. Like surfers are happy. There's a reason. They're like bathing in the salt water that takes that stress away. So there's many things we can do, but don't think it's okay. It's normal part of aging. I just have to like get through it. I'll still just do my duty. No, please, take care of yourself. Realize pain could be a signal of something that's going on that you need to pay attention to. It's there for a reason, as a gift. So listen to it, don't suppress it, and take care of yourself.
All right. So we've talked about, the connection through conversation. We've talked about the physical and the mental, but let's talk about the spiritual part of this. Because when we can draw in energy and we're looking at the certain energy chakras, this can really enhance this whole experience for us as well. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Spirituality, you can think about it as a purpose of life. What is purpose? How you can get, but it can really just be a purpose in your relationship. Like, how are you as 2 individual souls coming together for a common purpose, not only to love each other, but then to do whatever you want to do together. There really is a journey of a partnership. And when we look at life and a union as a partnership, I think it really can change what we do and sort of the spiritual part of how are we giving back? How are we teaching others what love is? I think one of the biggest lessons of life and of energy is really realizing love is the answer. That love is the most important frequency. And when we're living in a frequency of love and not of fear down below the chakras, survival and fear and, trying to get others, it's a very different outlook in life. And we know our heart and our chakras. That chakra is so powerful. It's like has the most electromagnetic, resonance. And more than even your brain. And so when we are in that frequency, we are actually at the cell level releasing hormones that are going to be beneficial for our well-being. Dopamine and serotonin. These are like the happy hormones that people take on antidepressants and Prozac. But like we can generate them ourselves when we are in a frequency of love, when we're in a frequency of gratitude. So these things are really important. It's not just woo. I mean, they're physically it's happening at the cell level, how your body's changing. And people are going to notice that. People are going to notice like, oh, you just look a little more radiant today. Like, why? It's not your cream. It's just really living in a different frequency of love and not of fear and of anger and resentment. So when you can do that spiritually as a union, I mean, everybody benefits. So I think it's really important to realize, and also, if you think about like Tantra or Kundalini, like we're talking about like energy is rising. So it starts in your lower chakras and your basic sexual organs, but like the whole point is to rise to a spiritual union with the divine. I mean, that's really what it's about, that we all hope to. And we may not get that. Again, if we're just sort of down here, just changing energy and orgasming, and here we go. But if you really look at it spiritually, that union, it can really be just magical.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying here is that that we want to be in a state of love or in a high frequency emotion. Otherwise, we're not going to feel like sex. We're not going to feel like being intimate. We're not going to even feel like having a conversation with our partners. And so if you are in a place where you've been feeling disconnected, one of the most powerful exercises that I always recommend, I mean, gratitude is one of the fastest ways for us to get into this high frequency. Gratitude is the gateway to love and to connection with the divine, and everything else that's amazing is on the other side of gratitude. So when you have your gratitude practice and you're writing down 5 things every day, I would encourage you to make 2 to 3 of those things about your partner, because I know that when we get into, and like this was my experience, because there's a slippery slope, like we stop being intimate and then, then I'm starting to get annoyed with him and then, resentment shows up. And so then every time I see him, I'm only looking through the lens of resentment.
Yep.
I'm not looking through the lens of love or gratitude. So when you can shift your focus to all the things that you're grateful for and all the reasons that you love your partner and you acknowledge that, and I encourage you to go one step further and actually share these things with them, then you'll remember what we focus on expands. So what you're focusing on now is all the good things about your partner, which maybe you forget when you're looking through that lens of resentment.
Yeah, it's absolutely so powerful because, the more we're grateful for, the more we'll find more things to be grateful for. And our brain is such an efficient computer. It just wants to be efficient. So whatever you put in front of it, it just wants to continue to see that. So when we are focusing on gratitude, whether it's a partner or everyday life, you'll see more things throughout the day that you can be grateful for. But again, if you focus on all the bad things and just watch the news media all day and like all the terrible things, you'll see that all day, every day. So we have a choice. We have the willpower to say, okay, what do I want to put my energy, my focus on? Because it will color your whole day and your experience. So gratitude is absolutely beautiful. And yes, when we start looking at the partner through that lens, it like softens our heart and we're like, okay, it's not so bad. Like they're not so annoying. But like if we just start, having that grudge, and then it really is just spirals really quickly. Because again, our brain wants to be efficient. It'll find 100 things that are annoying to us, 100 things that you can't stand about the person. But, it's so important. Like, how are you starting your day or ending your day? I mean, you can do your gratitude practice at night and the morning. And again, throughout the day is going to continue. But it's really important to anchor and to have that time to do this, because otherwise, how are you just waking up, just rolling over, running for the coffee, checking the emails? We really have to have a time to slow down and have an intent for the day and for the week, really.
Yeah. And I think the other side of this too is the self-love. And I think part of what was happening when I was married was that I was not happy with my body. I wasn't happy with myself. I was just, I was operating from that energy. So, and I would have thoughts in my mind, like, how is he even possibly attracted to me when I look like this and blah, 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 like just crazy stuff. So if you can get into a practice of self-love, because that's from there, it's easy. Then we can, love others. And I know it sounds cliche. Oh, you got to love yourself before you love anybody else. It's actually true. Like, you actually have to do that and be from a place where your cup is full so that you have the love to be able to give to your partner and to others, which I think is really important. So if there was one thing, if there's someone listening to the podcast right now and there's one thing that you think would be the most powerful needle mover for them to get from a place of where they are now, where they may feel disconnected from their partner, to, creating, more intimacy, whether it's just through conversation or affection or whatever, what do you think that would be for them?
I mean, I really think it's going to the self-love. And I think a beautiful exercise women can really truly do is, because I think so many women wake up or in the day, they're so ashamed of their body and they don't want to look at themselves naked. And they're like, oh, this is terrible and this. And, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, this is a beautiful opportunity to like love yourself and say, I love, my little, stretch marks or this or my changes in the body. And like, that's beautiful. And, it's not narcissistic, but it really is an exercise of like self-love that you can do where nobody's watching to really cultivate this practice of like loving yourself and all our body as a divine, really, vessel, because it really is. And so when you look at it through the eyes of the divine, that we are, God's or creation, whatever you like to call it, light universe, and you look at yourself that way, then you can have that compassion to the partner and you can come from a place of love. And again, making that time just to have these conversations that are uncomfortable. Nobody kind of wants to do it, but again, if you don't do it, the life you're going to be living is going to be a little bit different of just, settling and grudgement and fights and disconnect. I mean, you can live like that. I mean, people do. I mean, I'm a urologist. I see people, that are in their 80s and 90s, and I always kind of wonder, and ask them about their lives. And then I see people that are in their 90s and their eyes are twinkling with their partner. And they see each other and they twinkle and they just are, illuminated by their partner. And it really always comes when I ask them about communication and about like true love. And they just love their partner and they communicate. And it's just like that simple, but we complicate it. And then we get afraid and then we want to hide and not have those conversations. But if we don't, then I think our relationships will be much different. And again, it starts with the self.
And you know what? And life is too short for us to go through life not being happy or not being fulfilled or not being content.
Mm-hmm.
When we really can make a difference, when we can change that for ourselves and for our partners. So, Diana, thank you so much for your time today, darling. I've loved our conversation. I knew it was going to be awesome. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Not Over, Just Different. If you felt inspired by this episode, please subscribe and drop a comment below to let us know what you loved. My goal is to reignite the spark that you may think you've lost and cultivate a space where no matter what walk of life you are, you can step into the world with power and confidence. I would love to hear your reviews. It helps us to reach more incredible women like you. So until next time, keep growing, keep striving, and keep believing in the power of your potential. Here's to living your best life now.